All right, good morning. We're going to call today's Housing, Urban Development, and Zoning Committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Present.
Alderwoman Sanier. Alderman Browning.
Present.
Chair Clerk Hubbard.
Here.
We have Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Sanier. We have 3 present. We have a quorum.
So actually, we don't have quorum now, but we're okay. We're going to go ahead and get started with things that we don't have to vote on, which was understood prior to this meeting being scheduled and the agenda being set, because we have some members that got called out and will be coming over as soon as they're available. So this meeting here was properly noticed. You all have done your part, the most responsible part, with showing up to participate in this process. If you follow me, you know that the committee hearing for me is what I always preach about being the most important part of the process, because it's the part of the process that constituents and the public who we are responsible to can weigh in, can participate, can be heard, and things can be changed. Agreements can be made, and good legislation can come out of the committee hearing. That's the part of the process and the only part of the process that you all can participate. And so again, I appreciate you all for taking the time out, and I'm sorry for this bit of tardiness now and out of respect for people's timing. But I do want to know that as chair, this agenda was set and understood with all of my members of the committee about how it would run, and the bill sponsors that were on the agenda as well. And so we were moving this agenda around because we had a presentation, and then we were going to be hearing the bills. The board bills might change as well, but my commitment to you all remains that I still want to hear from you all. So please afford us that grace. I'm sorry that it wasn't communicated, but I'm communicating it now. Everybody knows I would never turn anybody from the public down from speaking at a HUD's committee hearing. So we are starting this committee with our disparity study that's online. The good thing about this is that it's being captured by STLTV. So everything that is said and shared can continue to be said and shared with your networks as we move forward in whatever direction that we want to go in and the things that are on the agenda today. And so with that, Madam Clerk, we can go ahead and get started with item number 1 on the committee discussions, which is the City of St. Louis Disparity Studies presented by Keene Independent.
We're going to start with a PowerPoint, so Blanca's putting that up.
Miss, is it Hum?
Yes, Annette Hum-Keen.
Thank you so much. Can all of you all at this point raise your right hand? I swear all of you all in at the same time. You swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much. You may proceed.
It looks like Blanca's having trouble sharing. Does it need to be allowed on her end, on your end? There we go. Great. So I'm Annette Hum-Keen, a principal of Keene Independent. With me here today is David Keene, principal with Keene Independent, Janine Kiritis, our chief listening officer, and Blanca Montero, senior consultant with the firm. Next slide. So today we're going to give you just a very brief introduction to the study team, including our sub-consultants, local sub-consultants. We're going to talk about disparity study results, and as many of you know, we had conducted 2 disparity studies for the city and 2 for the county. There were two, each one of the entities got a contract disparity study and then also a workforce disparity study. And today we're going to show you the results and recommendations. We're going to move quickly and speed through these so that there can be time for questions. Next slide. Janine?
Joining us on the disparity studies for the city and county of St. Louis were two minority-owned firms, women-owned firms, local firms. One was Added Dimensions. Mary Ann Taylor Crate is the president, as well as Crystal Allen Dallas, president of Excel Business Concepts. We also had joining our diverse team, Keith Weiner of Holland and Knight, a partner there. He's done disparity studies, worked on the legal analysis for us on many of our studies over the years. And Sanjay Verdul, another minority business owner from Texas, who conducted our availability survey. Keene Independent is a national economic consulting firm. We're diverse. You can see our picture here of all of our staff. Everyone is very trained and seasoned. We're experts in performing disparity studies. We've done expert witness in courts. We have our methodology, which we believe is the strongest in the marketplace today. And the study team has combined over 200 disparity studies over the years. Blanca?
Thank you. As a first step for this disparity study, we collected data from the city, including tax incentivized projects. We collected procurement and subcontract data from January 1st, 2016 to December 31st, 2021. For each of those procurements, prime as contractors, we determined business owner race, ethnicity, gender, and a size of business. We also the type of work that they performed and where the firm was located. Next slide, please. With this information, we were able to determine the geographic market area. The relevant geographic market area is determined where most of the contract dollars, in this case of city and SLDC contract dollars, were spent. We found that 89% of city contract dollars were spent on firms with a location in the St. Louis metro area. With this information, once we determined the types of work and the geographic market area, we conducted a survey. We call it an availability survey, where we asked thousands of firms about if they were interested in qualified and conducting work for the city and SLDC. We wanted to know about type of work that they perform, bid capacity, what was the largest contract that they bid, or they awarded a contract. We want also to know about ownership information, what was the owner, race, ethnic, and gender ownership of the firm. And also, really important, we wanted to know about the experiences in the marketplace. There was a list of questions about it. Once we have information from the availability survey, we were able to calculate some availability benchmarks that we call these doing this by a contract weighted availability method. To calculate these availability benchmarks, we control by size of the contract, type of work performed, bid capacity, what was the largest contract, the role, if they bid or obtained a contract at prime or sub during businesses. This information, we were able to compare utilization, percentage of contract dollars going to those firms, and availability. And results, Dave will talk about it. Dave?
Thank you. Next slide, please. Here's an overview. As you know, the City of St. Louis has a minority women business program, and we were able to divide contracts into those where the program applied. In those, because of the industry or the size of the contract or other characteristics of the contract, the program did not apply. The percentage of dollars going to minority and women-owned firms, including both certified and non-certified NBEs and WBEs, was about a third of the city's contract dollars, including tax incentivized projects. that would be involved with developers and contractors where there would be a tax incentive involved. About a third of those contract dollars went to minority women-owned firms with the program being applied. Without the program, that utilization drops almost by half. So 19% of the contract dollars for city contracts without the Minority and Women Business Program applied went to minority and women-owned firms. So that lower utilization is critically important when you compare that to what you would expect if there were a level playing field, given the relative availability of minority women-owned firms to perform that specific type of work and sizes of contracts, contracts and subcontracts involved in both those contracts and subcontracts where the program applied and those where the program did not apply. So our benchmark when the program applied, we would expect if there were a level playing field that 40% of the dollars would go to minority or women-owned firms. So the utilization is a little bit below that, but it's fairly close. And so the program appears to be successful, especially compared when you look at the contracts without the program. So the 19% participation of minority and women-owned firms is substantially less than the approximate half of the contract dollars that you would expect to see going to minority and women-owned firms if there were a level playing field, if minority and women-owned firms had an equal chance of winning those contracts that they were available for. This is after controlling for what type of work firms perform, what type of contract opportunities do we have in each one of these sets of city contracts in tax incentivized contracts. How big were the contracts? We're looking at very small procurements and very large contracts. Was it a role as the prime contractor or the subcontractor? Were these goods and services contracts where it was the vendor bidding based on a low price? So this is the big picture. It shows that but for the city's program, there would be very large disparities in the utilization of minority women-owned firms and suggest a continued need for the program. So we're going to get into some of the details and some of our recommendations of how to further strengthen the program. And then at the very end, we'll brief you quickly on the workforce disparity study, where we're not looking at firms and contractors and contracts, but we're looking at workers on city projects and tax incentivized projects. Next slide, please. So instead of a bar chart comparing utilization and availability, here are the raw numbers. So the left bar chart was our utilization. That's the left-hand column. And you can see the percentages of dollars going to different groups of minority-owned businesses on the top. So 12.96%, about 13% of the contract dollars went to African-American-owned firms. Overall, this is with and without the program, and city contracts and tax incentivized contracts. You would expect about 21% of the contract dollars to go to African-American-owned firms. And so that's a disparity index of 62. We calculate that index by dividing the 12.96 by the 20.93 and putting that on a scale of 0 to 100. If there was a perfect match, if firms were getting what you might expect given the availability, that disparity index would be 100. So you'd be getting 100% of the dollars that you might expect given the availability. But for African-American-owned firms, you got a disparity index of 62, which means African-American-owned firms are getting less than 2/3, even with the city's program in place, of the dollars that you might expect given availability of African-American-owned firms for the types and sizes of contracts that the city has. We see substantial disparities also for Hispanic American-owned firms, for Native American-owned firms, and we see a disparity index of 83 for white women-owned firms. White women-owned firms are getting about 11% of the city contract dollars, and you would expect about 13% of those dollars to go to white women-owned firms. This is with the program in place. So even with the program, there were some substantial disparities for some groups. Next slide, please. And here we see that same type of table, and we split the contracts into with the program on the left and without the program on the right. So with the program, much higher utilization for each one of the groups. So that left-hand column shows the positive effects of the program. For example, for white women-owned firms, about 12% of the contract dollars going to WBEs compared to about 7% without the program, which is in the table on the right. For African-American-owned firms, about 14% of the dollars going to African-American-owned firms with the program, only 10% on the right. And we see substantial disparities for each racial and ethnic group, which is what the courts are really looking to see if there is a support for the program, for continuation of the program. We see clear evidence that without the city's program in city contracts, you would have substantial disparities for each racial and ethnic group that are eligible for the program, and for women-owned firms as well. You see the disparity index for white women-owned firms is 30, which means white women-owned firms are getting 1/3 of the work that you might expect given a level playing field. Overall, for minority firms, minority-owned firms, that disparity index is 40, which means minority-owned firms are earning about 40 cents out of every dollar that you might expect. So these are critical results. We did this by industry and saw that same pattern without the program, industry by industry, for example, looking at construction contracts or professional services contracts. Next slide, please. We looked at tax incentivized contracts separately. This is where SLDC would be operating a program that would apply to developers, contractors that are getting city tax incentives. And here we see some effectiveness of the program. So 36% of those contract dollars were going to minority and women-owned firms. For some groups, it's less effective. For example, for African-American-owned firms, only 15% utilization. Even with the program in place, you would expect 24% participation. Next slide, please. So our study results show a pattern of substantial disparities across the board, and you summarized here. And even with the program, or combined dollars with and without the program, if you just look at all of city dollars, you see for many groups, including African American, Hispanic American, Native American, and white women-owned firms, there were substantial disparities. This is summarizing hundreds of pages of research results that are in the disparity study. These are available to you to review. In there, you see other quantitative analyses, such as, are there as many minority women-owned firms even formed and working in the marketplace as you might expect, given the demographics of the St. Louis metro area and the number of people working in these industries who might potentially form businesses. For some groups, for some industries, we found many fewer businesses than you might expect if there were a level playing field for anybody to be able to successfully start and sustain a business. We also interviewed, especially our local team of sub-consultants interviewed, many hundreds of local businesses, workers, trade associations, and others, and found what's going on in the St. Louis metro area from their perspective is very consistent with our quantitative results. Next slide. From all of this information, we are recommending that the city consider updating and establishing an overall 3-year aspirational goal for minority women business participation, and gave the city some numbers to consider. That is aspirational. The city would not need to necessarily meet that immediately, but it's a long-term goal. We're recommending that the city consider refining the minority women business program in place now to include program elements such as contract-specific construction goals, and expanding that program to professional services contracts so that you either meet the goal or show good faith efforts to meet the goal if you're bidding on a project, And that goal is specific to that project. So a vertical construction project that might have a lot of subcontracting opportunity and there'd be a lot of availability of minority and women-owned firms, that might have a higher goal, much higher than what you might see in a program today. And on the same in the same vein, if the project didn't have many subcontracting opportunities or there was limited availability, maybe that would have a lower goal. So really tailoring those contract goals to what could be achieved on each one of those projects. There's a bid discount program element of the current minority and women business program. We recommend the city consider continuing that. And we thought that when we examine the small purchases at the city, that might be the foot in the door for many smaller minority and women-owned businesses, we saw that there was a pattern of disparities and that there really was an opportunity to increase minority and women business participation in those small purchases by simply asking for bids from those firms, directly contacting those firms in a way that exceeds what the city is doing now. This is a national issue, but it certainly is a regional issue when you look at issues such as access to capital. Can minority and women-owned firms get financing, bank financing, get bonding at the same, bonding rates and the same, levels of bonding as other firms? Getting access to insurance, getting access to other components that it's necessary to put a bid together, a successful bid together to work as a prime on a city contract or as a sub on a city contract. Those are regional issues. There are regional partnerships that the city could strengthen and help provide leadership within the community so that down the road, minority and women-owned firms can compete on a level playing field for city projects and private sector projects as well. This is going to require resources, additional resources than what's being devoted now, and additional training for city staff for program success. Now, for the workforce disparity study, Blanca Monter just showed you the market area for contractors and vendors. It's the same market area, St. Louis metro area, for workers on city projects. Workers come from all over the metro area, not just the city of St. Louis. And so we looked at utilization and availability of workers and conditions in the marketplace when no programs apply. We found, next slide. We found substantial disparities, especially for African Americans and women, in employment opportunities within the construction industry. The disparities were substantial. They have been in place for a very long time. And the current city program where there are work hours goals for different groups may not be an impactful remedy for any employment discrimination or discrimination in advancement of particularly African Americans and women within the construction industry. We are recommending the city consider a range of additional programs in partnership with the county and others in the metro area to remedy the long-term effects of race and gender discrimination that is affecting workers' opportunities for jobs and work in the construction industry. Next slide. So here are the elements of a unified metro area focused workforce program, and really looking to simplify the program and make it even more effective by doing this jointly with other public sector agencies like the county, establishing aspirational goals for different racial, ethnic, and gender groups in the metro area construction trades. But the big focus here for city consideration is work on the pipeline of new workers entering the trades and focusing on underrepresented workers. This will require going into the K through 12 school system and supporting those opportunities for underrepresented workers, but also maintaining a workforce goals program that exists for women and eventually focusing the race conscious and local hire programs, creating a new targeted worker program. We describe this in detail in the report. So it's a new way of looking at this. It's looking at both the the supply of workers coming into the industry, because you have a number of people retiring out of the industry. You need more construction workers, and traditionally those workers look a certain way, and people of color, especially African Americans and women, have not had the same opportunities to get some of these well-paid jobs that don't require a four-year college degree. It's very impactful for the local economy to have this be equal access to these types of jobs. We have gone through thousands of pages of research in a very short amount of time. We want to leave room for questions. So that is our last slide.
All right, thank you so much, King Consulting, for this thorough presentation. Thank you for the background information that you shared as well. Did you have any other general comments that you wanted to make? Or I don't know if anybody from the SLDC team that's on a line had any comments they wanted to make before we open it up to the public here? For questions? Okay. Is there anyone online that was prepared or wanting to speak on behalf of the St. Louis City Disparity Study? Did they speak?
Not showing any hands raised.
Okay. All right. The speakers that we have signed up in the room, we'll go ahead and move forward with those.
First, we have Mr. and Mrs. Miguel and Carla Alexander.
I think they may be here for the board bill, correct? Okay. So we had a separate sheet. That's what the other sheet.
We have Mr. Adolphus Pruitt from the NAACP.
Morning, Mr. Pruitt. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? I know that's right. All right.
Big mouth. I thought with my big mouth it would be sufficient, but I guess it ain't. Yeah, you're gonna make me turn this on and embarrass myself. Oh, the people online. No, Madam Chairman, members of the committee, I'm here to speak in favor of the disparity study as relates to its outcomes. I agree wholeheartedly with the numbers that were presented. I believe it paints an accurate picture of what is going on in the marketplace here in St. Louis. I will caution by saying that it was a couple of the recommendations that I do have some, not concern, but I think we need to keep an eye on. One, it mentioned about the contract-specific goals. That is something that is going on right now in St. Louis County. I remember when that bill first came up in St. Louis County, we opposed it. It subsequently passed and was implemented. But if you look at the numbers in St. Louis County, the numbers in my estimation are dismal. And I think that particular aspect of their program is a big reason why that's the case. I remember when we spoke with this group earlier, and I had mentioned to them that I was really concerned about if you're going to compare apples to oranges, we really have to be careful. And the other piece that I think we need to be careful about when they talked about the workforce as relates to the training individuals to get more people in the building trades specifically. The building trades have historically, since their existence, been an impediment for minorities and women to get into that part of the workplace. If you look at the union's numbers as relates to minority and women in the industry overall, they've lagged behind forever. Just forever. And so we have no faith that that's going to change. The fact that the city and the county or whoever may come up with some sort of program with an emphasis on it, the building trades and entry into their apprenticeship programs and things like that, we have no control over. and they keep control over those areas with an iron fist. And again, a demonstration of how well they keep control over their program. We're not in it. We have a big, hard problem getting in it. And then last, I would say this is that, you know, while the city program needs some improvement and some tweaks, let's just be mindful that over the past decade, minorities have received a little bit more than $700 million out of the city's program, even though we were way far behind. And so I don't want to see those numbers drop. They've risen over the past decade. So I think as we move forward with modifying the program, we need to take in consideration what has been done in the past. I think that the things that really need to be tightened up in the city's program comes in the monitoring and the compliance aspect. And I don't know if the people who prepare this disparity study look, but if you look at MSD's program, which we had a lot of input on helping them craft, MSD is hitting all their goals, blowing them out the water. They're blowing the workforce goals out of the water, compliance and monitoring out of the water. And so I think it would be great to talk with somebody from MSD, look at their program, look at the aspects of their program, because it does work and it does outperform any program in the state of Missouri. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Pruitt.
Thank you. Next, we have Yafet El-Amin.
You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
So help me God. I do. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Yafet El-Amin. I am the Executive Director of MOCAN Construction and Contractors Assistance Center. MOCAN, since 1974, has been an active participant and leader in MNWBE diversity and inclusion for minority contractors, as well as workers, as well as female contractors and workers. Today, we would like to go on record in, of course, support of the city's disparity study. As Adolphus mentioned earlier, there are some areas of the recommendations that we believe are good. However, we believe that in addition to these recommendations, that the city should also look at areas to penalize companies who, in fact, have not been meeting the current goals and put more teeth into penalties for those companies that continue to underutilize MBE businesses. I would like to say that since 1989, when MOCAN first sued the city of St. Louis for discrimination, and the city signed a consent decree which established the program in 1990, each disparity study has continued to find evidence of discrimination. We are now more than 30 years later, and the continual underutilization of African American businesses has continued to create a profound negative impact on the economic stability and viability of our community. So we are happy to have the goals, but we would like the committee to understand that we want to eventually move to a place where we do not have to have the goals in order to have an equal playing field. Every time we look at availability and underutilization, we may as well count that as additional businesses going out of business, because we understand if you continue to underutilize us, we will not exist. And this disparity study does not count those companies that in fact have gone out of business. Close to 50% of African American businesses during COVID went out of business. So currently, we are only counting those companies that still remain. So we are appreciative of the disparity study and, of course, them finding the disparities. However, we beckon and ask the city to aggressively look at not only for the businesses and for the workforce. In addition to their suggestions, and one of the Keene representatives talked about doing workforce outreach to K to 12. We should be doing workforce outreach in our prisons, understanding that more than 90% of those people are coming back to the city of St. Louis who left from here. What can we do to increase opportunities for justice-served individuals, grown people now, who are unable to take care of their families because they are not given a viable second chance opportunity? So I'd like for our programs to look into what we can do to incentivize justice-served individuals helping to make up our workforce. And of course, as you all know, and I will close, MOCAN, since the highway shut down in 1999, has been active in the pre-apprenticeship training of non-traditional construction workers, with the Construction Prep Center being established from 2000 to 2014, and now with MOCAN's own pre-apprenticeship program being in establishment from 2015 to currently. Those programs are woefully underfunded, and we need those types of programs to help to prepare people within the workforce, particularly minorities and females. And lastly, as Adolphus mentioned, the discrimination in the construction unions. We would also ask this committee to ask the unions to bring forth their numbers of minorities and females in the apprenticeship program, particularly as many of the construction jobs and opportunities are done by construction labor union companies. It's important for you all to understand what those numbers look like in order for us to create a remedy to afford more females as well as African Americans into the construction trades. Thank you, Madam Chair. We look forward to working with the City Board of Aldermen, SLDC, for the establishment of the new disparity study goals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Elamine. I'll circle back to online if anyone from SLDC had any comments they would like to offer after, or Keene would like to offer after the public testimony. Okay. I'll move forward to the committee to see if they have any comments. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time for questions. I found it really interesting that you're talking about the interviews that you had with contractors and what they were talking about regarding the disparities. You know, we hear a lot from contractors about different issues that they have as well, and I'm wondering kind of the breadth of those conversations and what sort of topics that you talk to them about, and anything else that stands out from those conversations.
Janine, do you want to answer that question?
Sure. When we speak to business owners and business representatives, we ask them generally, what is it like to have opportunities and or work in the marketplace? How do they start their firm? How do they sustain it? What are the keys to success and challenges they face? Are there challenges with access to capital? Are there challenges with learning about opportunities in the first place? Are there assistance programs where they can learn about business operations and how to sustain themselves? Do we ask them about COVID? We asked them, how did it affect your firm? We did speak to firms that had closed. We asked them about what were the challenges? What were the barriers? How did that happen? So just about everything you can think of that could happen to a business, whether it's a key to success or a key to failure, we had conversational interviews with them. We also had small group sessions, what we call business advisory groups, where business owners could talk freely about what it's like to be a business owner in the marketplace. And we spoke to firms at all levels, at all times in their life cycle.
Thank you. I'm interested also in just the relationship they had with the city of St. Louis, questions, concerns, things that they had dealt with. I know there's a lot of different pieces to working with the city, and obviously being chosen for a contract is just one part of it, and have the work product and then the end. And that kind of gets to my next question regarding. Yeah, go ahead.
I can address that. There were some comments that women particularly said that sustaining a business with transportation issues and security issues, safety issues, as well as lack of childcare in the industry, in the marketplace, was challenging for them to sustain their business. We also heard similar remarks from the workers when we spoke to workers. We also found that in some of the opportunities to subconsult or to subcontract, some of the small business owners were saying that there's nepotism, they can't break in, prime contractors hire the same contractors over and over again. They consider it like a catch-22. They don't have the capacity to get work, but they need the capacity to move forward. So those are the kind of issues that we commonly heard from small business owners and minority and women-owned firms in the marketplace. Dave?
And in total, I think it was more than 600 or 800 individuals that actually provided, either through an interview or took the opportunity to provide us comments that we actually heard from. So it was a very broad cross-section of the both workers and business owners and potential business owners in the market.
Thank you. The compliance and monitoring piece was brought up during public comment, but also is something that I feel is just a big part of this effort. There are a lot of additional expanded measures suggested, and it really goes back to what can the city manage and maintain, and how does the city do it? So did you touch upon those issues?
We did. Of course, you'll want to consult your counsel about what you legally can do, but the having consequences for any actions on the part of a bidder or a contractor working with you where they may have no intention of complying with the program. That may be the plan from the beginning. Being able to, and that may be rare, but it still affects the opportunities and it puts them at an advantage over contractors that are making good faith efforts to comply and to provide opportunities. So having the teeth and being able to actually apply penalties, whether that's a financial penalty at the end of a contract or a potential penalty or suspension of a contract during a contract, or even at time of bid, if contractors are not that are not acting in good faith, if they are not able to get a contract with the city, that is a very effective tool to ensuring compliance down the road. It doesn't take very many actions like that to then have get the message out that you're very serious about the contract compliance part of it.
Is that one of the actions that you recommended, or?
Well, we in general, we don't think you have resourced the program operation in a way that is required, both to be able to take those types of actions that I just described, but also just to know where you're at, be able to report to groups like this, what's the real effectiveness, what are we achieving. Being able to count all businesses as well as certified businesses is something that's important here, because only a portion of the market minority women-owned firms actually go through a certification process. So being able to report both sets of numbers, both the certified and all firms, is critically important. And having the information systems to be able to get good reports to the city, that's one area that we found seriously deficient in parts of the city, is being able to get you the types of information you need, so you can make good decisions down the road, and where what departments are being effective and what types of contracts or departments are not. Especially you look at the smaller contracts, because it's not just the big contracts and big subcontracts that the city should be focusing on is the smaller contracts where a small firm can work directly with the city and maybe not getting the opportunities right now.
Thank you very much for taking the time to come today and present and answer my questions. And if we have any more, should we reach out to you, or who's our follow-up?
We've been working with SLDC, who's been managing our contract. So anybody that would be involved in the disparity study from SLDC has been reaching out to us directly to answer questions and have us come present to you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Slice. I had a quick follow-up for something that I think Ms. Janine said, and I want to start off with, what were the dates? I see when the contract was awarded in 2016 through December 2021, which was about, a year or so into the pandemic. And so I know you mentioned that you spoke with some of the closed businesses. Can you tell us how you went about communicating and getting in contact with some of the closed businesses, and then also the timeline again of when this data was collected?
Businesses that were closed, some had already conducted the availability survey. And when the availability survey, the results come back, we contact firms and basically ask the firms who were interested in interviews to talk to them. We also they were able to reach out to us via email and other methods to let us know that they were interested in participating. So that's basically how we found it. We didn't have a list of closed firms. It was outreach and hearing back from firms who wanted to share with us.
Okay, thank you for that follow-up. And then I know that Ms. Fowler is on the line too, so she's going to raise her hand, Madam Clerk. So Alderman Browning, would you like to ask your questions prior to Ms. Fowler on behalf of SLDC, or do we want to wait for her? Either way, wait for her. Okay, all right, Ms. Fowler, are you still? You see Ms. Stacy Fowler? Okay. Ms. Fowler, did you have some general comments you wanted to make prior to the questions, or did you want to wait for the question?
I'll wait for your questions, and then I can come back if someone else had other questions for King.
Okay. Alderman Browning.
Thank you, and thank you for being here to present your study today. I really appreciate that this is done in such a thorough manner. I wanted to ask about the impact of publicly subsidized or tax abated projects, which often require the use of, not often, they always require the use of MBE and WBE contractors. Your slides that were presented today alluded that M and WBE contractors rely on public contracts and publicly subsidized projects to remain viable. If there is a decrease in tax subsidized projects, could you elaborate on the impact that might have on M and WBE?
Sure. Is that a question for Keene Independent?
Yes.
Yeah, we found, we could go back to the slide, but as I recall, it was, more than 30% of the contract dollars, maybe closer to 40% of the contract dollars on tax incentivized projects were going to minority women-owned firms. That's far above what minority women-owned firms are receiving in the private marketplace. There is not a good, private sector replacement for those revenues if that's going to be reduced in the future. So it would have a negative financial effect on minority women-owned firms. Unless there was some increase in other public spending that in their trades, in their disciplines, that they could look to.
So, thank you. So just to be clear, if we decrease the amount of tax abatement that we use in the city, that could potentially hurt minority and women-owned businesses.
Yeah, to the extent that the volume of projects where the program is applied would be reduced, that could have a negative effect.
Thank you. Now, your slides also alluded that incentivized projects should be doing better, especially with that requirement that we have in place, than, say, non-incentivized projects. And they are, but they aren't doing as well as they could be. And you outlined some recommendations in your presentation. Could you speak a little more about those and any other cities or regions that are doing a better job at implementing that kind of requirement?
Well, best practice is to set contracts specifically to the contract goal, specific to what the project is about and what opportunities there are for subcontracting. So have it be trade specific. And there are going to be certain projects that maybe the goals could be higher on than what you're setting right now and still be achievable. So that is one area to try to close the gap. The other is, frankly, on the supply side, because we know that there are minority and women-owned companies that are not certified that could be, and maybe just don't see or are skeptical about the opportunity. If there really is a real opportunity there, we think there is, and to work with those firms to assist in the certification to be able to participate in those types of projects. So we think that there are firms that are not being counted towards the contract goals that could be and should be in the future if they saw more of an advantage to be certified and received some assistance in getting certified.
I think that clues into really what my next question was going to be, which is, can we expect a certain level of under or overutilization of MBE and WBE contractors just by the number of firms there are to utilize? Does it make sense that increasing the number would likely result in better utilization of them as well?
Certainly, in our experience, the bigger the pool of companies that can participate in any type of program like this, the stronger and more impactful the program is going to be, and the higher your contract goals can be, because you have availability to be able to meet a contract goal. If one company gets busy, another company gets an opportunity. And what Janine Karitsis was talking about in terms of the interviews, you get around the problem of, you see the same firms over and over again being used on a project, really encouraging prime contractors to reach out to new potential subcontractors that they have not used before, that still have a strong track record. And this is where minority women-owned firms face a particular disadvantage. And it's not only that you may not be known to the prime contractor but you may be facing stereotypes or other disadvantages of what that contractor who doesn't know you assumes about you. That white male-owned subcontractor may not face those same disadvantages. So, it's critically important to have firms participate in the program, get certified, and do all the work, all the legwork to make sure that those subcontractors are being introduced to the prime contractors, so that you remove some of the the negative, the opportunities for negative stereotyping. You get more firms involved, and you get the self-reinforcing system of, hey, I was skeptical, but I got a contract opportunity. I'm going to tell other people about this, and make sure that they know about my positive experience as well, not just hearing from me that, hey, a prime contractor just closed the door to me and won't work with me.
Excellent. I appreciate that. I also saw that you kind of spoke in your recommendations to the necessity of a region-wide approach. And I imagine this study was pretty interesting to dive into because of the fragmentation in the region, having to look not across just state lines, but also across county lines. and the frankly almost 100 municipalities we have in the area. Now, I think in our region, fragmentation seems to be the best word that you could use to describe what is our biggest obstacle when it comes to seeking solutions to any problem in the region. But I'm wondering what you think of when a developer has, say, the option to play municipalities against each other or go where the regulations are the most relaxed. Additional regulations just in St. Louis City might not amount to the results we're looking for. Given your recommendation to unify a metro area-wide program, is that the loophole that you're recommending we address?
Well, there's two things. One is get as many public entity participants as possible. So we're working in this project right now in Minnesota where they have 16 of the largest public sector entities in the state, including the state of Minnesota, are participating in a joint study. They are really going after a regional approach, so you don't have some of the issues that maybe other metro areas have. The fact that you did this with the county, and this was a joint effort with the county, is a great first step. Where being able to then take the coming out of the disparity study, coordinating some of the program efforts with the county is a great opportunity, and then work from there. So this took some effort from the city and from the county to do this. It maybe not the way you've done this in the past. We think this is a big positive and build on that.
Well, thank you. And I agree this is a great first step, and I'm hoping we can build on that as well. Last question I have for you is that I noticed the study noted that work hour requirements won't fix some of these disparities alone. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
One of the disadvantages with work hour requirements is you might simply just move the worker around between projects with the contract, with the workforce goals. And not really, it may not be impactful in bringing new people into the construction trades, which really is a very long process. And maybe opinions about whether the trades are a viable option need to be addressed in middle school. Some of the comments from MOCAN, we would second this and other speakers about kind of the historic discrimination in the construction trades against certain groups, especially African Americans and women, is generational. And this is traditionally an industry that can be handed down. Unfortunately, it's been father to son or uncle to nephew. And if you know somebody, then you have a leg up. And there's some assumptions about, well, who really are those people? Is getting a woman involved, getting an African American young person involved in the construction trades, is that really a pattern and a history of a real opportunity that's seen in the St. Louis metro area. And that historic discrimination is real, it's documented, it's in our study. The numbers today reflect that. So you have to combat that in a very serious way. And just simply saying, well, the workers that are already working in the industry, we want to make sure that those workers that already are in the trades, maybe journey workers already, get an opportunity on city projects. That's a noble goal, but that's not necessarily going to address the long-term problem of, well, who's not in the trades that really could be, and earning a substantial wage on a prevailing wage project that is working at a minimum wage job somewhere else. So these are good jobs. They are not seen as traditionally open to certain groups. And it's a sustained long-term effort working with all of the partners that are trying to recruit and train new people into the industry. That's a solution for it. The workforce, the goals are really not a strong tool. I'm not saying don't use the tool, but it's not the strongest tool to address this long-term problem.
Well, thank you. And that's all the questions I have for you. I look forward to hearing more from Ms. Fowler, SLDC, and I'll hand it back to the chair.
Thank you, Alderman Browning. I started smiling a little bit when you said that these are great first steps, and when David concurred that they were great first steps. But I'm going to push back and say for some people, these are probably second, third, going on fourth generation steps. Because I remember my grandfather. Thank you, President Pruitt, for your continued fight. When my grandfather was president in NAACP, fighting for these same needs, and being in position then that he was in to go and pick brothers and sisters up off the corners in the Ville to teach them of the construction trades, to build houses that people still live in today, because back then they were not being afforded the opportunities that we're still fighting for now. So I am grateful to be in position to now acknowledge the wins that we have supported and heard about today, but also continue the fight. And thank you for you all's comments and what sounds to me like commitment on the city side in our positions to be able to do this. I'll note that the supply commissioner, because I have reached out to him about already trying to meet just some of these small attainable things on the action side. And he mentioned to me, our supply commissioner, Chris Carter, that his office already is meeting and exceeding some of these needs, that there might be some tracking that needs to be done. And that's why I kind of asked the question about the timing of the data that's in this. Grateful for that. Want to be able to report that out as we move forward on these action items. And that he wants to know how we can help support him in targeting, like you said, David, some supply companies to be able to meet those goals. So with that, I'll go ahead and let Ms. Fowler speak, and then we will wrap it up with any closing comments on this presentation and get ready to all dive into these action items.
Thank you so much, Chairman Mark Hubbard, and to the HUD's committee. SLDC is committed to continue this work. We're very appreciative of the results and the data that Keene has provided. I think it shows a clear-cut picture that we've done some things, but there's still more work to be done. And one of the things of our ask of SLDC is our next steps and how we move forward. Now that we have this data, now that we see where the work really needs to begin, now it's time for us to roll our sleeves up, put our committees together, begin to digest what's in this disparity study, and begin to come up with our new rules and processes of how we want to combat where these disparities still exist. So my ask today of the committee is, will you be the body that will do the convening of the individuals that will put this committee together for us to start the work, to start the rewriting or the writing of the process and new ordinances to address what has come out of the study?
Oh, that's an easy yes. That's the easiest yes. You didn't even have to finish that comment. We can finish that. Yeah, we will be the body. I believe that we will be the body to continue this work. Thank you so much, Ms. Fowler, for the work that you and your team has done, standing in the gap over there in the Northside Economic Empowerment Center, and seeing these disparities and these gaps that we will now be fully committed in trying to close. So
perfect. We're ready. Just call us. We'll do what we need to do as we start this process of moving forward.
Thank you. Did you all have any additional comments from Ms. Fowler? Okay. Thank you. Keene, did you all have any additional comments in closing?
I think the only thing is that the studies are posted to the website, the study website. So please feel free. We recommend that if you want to get more details, please go ahead and read it. There is a summary report in the beginning that summarizes everything, makes it more palatable. But there's lots and lots of appendices, including both quantitative and qualitative, that I think can answer some more of your questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And please let us know if you ever need any additional time to come and and hopefully when we'll be presenting all of our follow-ups and our praise reports on these action items. Thank you so much for being here today. Okay, with that, again, noted in the beginning of this committee hearing that all of this, the flow of this agenda was shared with the sponsors, and the sponsors are the only people that can make changes as it relates to how their bills are carried, not just in committee, but on the floor of the Board of Aldermen. So even though per the sponsor's request, Board Bill 13 was pulled from the agenda today, I know it was still noticed on the website this morning. And so people are here to speak on behalf of Board Bill 13, and I'm committed to letting them still speak. So with that, Madam Clerk, we would like to go ahead and hear from the speakers on Board Bill 13.
First, we have Mr. and Mrs. Miguel and Carla Alexander speaking in opposition.
Madam Clerk, just for the public, again, I know this was publicly noticed, so people know what Bill 13 is, but if you would just read the summary prior to speaking. And again, no additional actions will be taken on Board Bill 13 per the sponsor's request. But since people did show me this morning that it was properly noticed on there and that they had made plans to be here, I want to have a respect.
Give me one moment
their
to pull that
time.
one up because we pulled it from the agenda. One moment.
All righty, so good afternoon.
I'm gonna swear, after she reads the summary,
Yes,
then
ma'am.
I'm gonna swear. Is there anyone else that's here to speak on behalf of this? Can you raise your right hand? And swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth to help you God? And there'll be.
Board Bill Board Bill number 13, introduced by Alderman Shane Cone, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission amending the zoning code and to add section 26.80.45, creating exceptions to certain parking, height, and area regulations of the zoning code for any parcel or portion thereof located within a 1/2 mile radius of the planned north side, south side Metro Transit stations, NSSS Metro stations on the Green Line light rail alignment approved by the East-West Gateway Council of Governments Board of Directors on February 28, 2024, and containing an emergency clause.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And now the first speaker can come up.
Okay, so this is not an official comment because things were kind of murky this morning with
I'm
the
sorry.
confusion.
Clark
So
Hubbard, I'm sorry.
we would like to yield our comments to next time. We are yielding our comments to next time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So just for anyone watching and for clarity for others, the speakers that were here today have now opted to yield and hold their comments until this board bill is placed back on an agenda. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for taking the time and commitment to this process. I apologize for this out of the utmost respect of you all's time, and that's why I wanted to allot this time if you did want to still speak. With that, we'll move forward. Alderman
Another?
Orion.
We have another. We have Ernestine Stewart, who wanted
She's
to speak.
opted to yield her time to,
Okay.
Thank you so much, you all. With that, we'll move forward. Alderman Narayan, you are recognized on Board Bill 41. Everyone who's here to speak on Board Bill 41, have you already signed in? Okay.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. So we are here discussing Board Bill 41, committee substitute. There is an amendment in the drive, and so I think if we could adopt that amendment, then we'll have the correct language in front of us as far as further discussions go. We've made some changes to the structure of the bill based on both feedback from this committee and others.
Okay, I'll accept the motion to adopt amendment number 1 to Board Bill 41 committee sub.
So moved.
Second discussion, please.
Okay, it was moved by Alderman Aldridge, seconded by Alderwoman Schweitzer with discussion. Go ahead, Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you. I just appreciate when people go over what the amendments are before we vote on them without people knowing what they are. So I
Sure.
explain it to the folks watching, and I think it's a good amendment. Happy to second it, but I would love for you to explain it. Thank you.
Sure. So the big amendment here is it's a percentage fee. It's a flat percentage fee for all hosts. That's in part based on some of your feedback, Alderwoman Schweitzer, last week about the concern on the owner-occupied, non-owner-occupied, as well as the perceived difficulties for some of the operators, and then what I had talked about, where a house when we had the flat fee, excuse me, not the flat fee, the graduated fees going up. We stopped at $5, and that was for a 4-bedroom, I believe. But that didn't account for some of the largest short-term rentals around that have many, many bedrooms. So this would, including one in my ward, frankly, and this would account for some of that. And it is what they have done in others.
I appreciate. I think it's a really thoughtful amendment. Going from I think what was an effort to get at the value and the cost of the rental to we're not going to have to come back in 10 years and see if a $150 fee is wildly inadequate based on, it's a 3% change from a dollar amount to a percentage of the rental. So you have something that's expensive, the fee's more, as opposed to something that's less expensive, the fee's less. So I appreciate the change and the public description of the amendment.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any discussion? Okay. Alderman Browning.
Thank you, Alderman. I do appreciate this amendment as well. I think it's a lot cleaner and a lot more easy to implement. I am wondering about, so we went from $150, $250, and $350, and $5, depending on the number of bedrooms, to just a flat 3% fee of the nightly rate. Do you have an updated idea of the amount of money that will bring to the city?
So that ultimately is in the fiscal note for this bill, and I believe that Ryan may be around if you really want to dive into it. But ultimately, the answer is it's an unknown at this point, just because we don't know how many ultimately of these short-term rentals there are at the moment, and then how many are going to remain short-term rentals once we put in the regulations, particularly short-term rentals, single-family A zones will have to go through conditional use hearings.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I suppose my question was, has the fiscal note been updated? But I don't know that it has.
I mean, updating from we don't know is kind of.
Well, yeah, I would love to have an idea of that, because I mean, any kind of fee that we impose, we should have a justification for how and why we need that money and what we could use it for. And so knowing what we could get would be very helpful. But my understanding is that even with this fee, they'd still be paying less taxes than a traditional hotel tax.
That is correct.
Okay, that's all the questions I have on the amendment. We proceed with the bill.
I see Mr. Coleman has come back. Did you want to just follow up with him on that, or you want to wait?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion on the amendment? Okay, all right, move forward.
With that, I'll ask for your favorable consideration on the amendment.
Roll call. You have a motion.
Yeah, ready? You want? Okay. I'll accept the motion on.
We have a
Oh, duh. Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanier.
Aye.
Alderman Browning.
Aye.
Alderman Aldrich.
Aye.
Chair Clark Hubbard. Aye. Alderman Cone. We have 5 aye votes.
All right, with that, we have successfully adopted.
I just have to ask.
Okay. Vice Chair Syan.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, may you please add me as co-sponsor?
Noted.
All right, please proceed.
All right, so at this point, we now have Board Bill 41 Committee Substitute as amended in front of us, which one of these days I'm going to get a board bill through without all those letters afterwards. But you know, that's part of the process here. So I know that there was some discussion last week about having the license collector here. The license collector was here at 11 o'clock and stayed for about an hour, but had another engagement. She did put forward written testimony, and I believe that Janika also sent over an email yesterday evening discussing many of the questions that people had from a license collector and assessor viewpoint that we went over last committee hearing. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Janika to go over just some of the specifics of that. She's done a lot of the heavy lifting here. And I think that if there are any further specific questions, that she'd be in a good position to answer those questions, as well as just give a more broad overview on the specifics of the license collector's viewpoint and the assessor's viewpoint on this board bill. So with your permission, I would turn it over to Janika.
Absolutely.
All right.
And I'll just chime in that I publicly apologize to license collector Mavis Thompson that it wasn't shared with Flo, how the flow of the meeting was, like we had discussed. I really am disappointed that she feels like her department as a whole has been slighted a number of times now by the Board of Aldermen, not by any fault of our own, but just clearly a miscommunication. So this is now a good opportunity for me to publicly apologize to license collector Mavis Thompson and her team who were here absolutely at 11 o'clock, but again, it was not shared to them as previously discussed the flow of the meeting. Thank you.
Good morning or afternoon. I just want to talk through some of the questions that the committee had for me, the discussions I had with stakeholders about the implementation of the bill. I did touch base with the license collector Friday about collecting any fees or taxes, and it's in your drive. As she reiterated, it would be no problem to collect any fees or taxes that the Board of Aldermen passes. Currently, with the MOU, the license collector collects the fees from the Airbnb platform quarterly. So she said this would be no different from that. I did reach out to Kitty Ratcliffe with the convention center just to get a landscape of what type of taxes and fees hotels are paying. And right now, she said they're sitting at about 20% per night on taxes, depending on if they're in a special taxing district, and the state sales tax and any other local fees or taxes that the city imposes. I talked to the assessor's office. He said that he is moving all short-term rental properties over to commercial once he classifies them. Right now, he says there's about 217 properties identified in the city, and then the average personal property tax is $150 annually on those properties. Airbnb has some really good resources right now about how they collect taxes, how they're applicable, and how they remit those, but all platforms don't necessarily provide that information or are doing that. When I had conversations with Expedia, who represents HomeAway and Burbia, which are short-term rental platforms, they said that this also isn't a problem. They've collaborated with many other cities on fees such as this, particularly Kansas City when they put this on the ballot last April. They gave us some really good feedback about making things uniform to not open up platforms and, quite frankly, hosts for tax liabilities and uniformity issues. And they suggested going with just like a flat percentage that makes compliance easier. I know the committee had some questions about who would remit this. Would it be hosts? Would it be the platforms? Right now, Airbnb remits on behalf of its hosts. I'm under the assumption that when 33 goes fully into effect in November, platforms will be remitting on behalf of hosts quarterly. I don't know if you all had any more specific questions than that.
I see Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you for the time you took to answer all these questions. I feel like the update to the bill and the fee just makes a lot more sense. And the way it's written now, I think will be clearer for everyone and more easily implemented. So I appreciate that. You answered all of my questions. The one thing I was sort of asking Ryan Coleman and you before, while we were talking about this, is regarding how much this will cost to implement, which we're saying we don't know, and then how much we'll be getting for it. But he did some back of the envelope math, and it's about 100 of these units would have to be paying in order to have the cover any sort of additional personnel that's needed. And you already said there's over 200 currently commercial, even though that's been a process to implement and figure out who's an Airbnb, who's not, who should be paying commercial taxes, all of that.
Absent regulations.
So I appreciate all of the work that went into this, and I don't have any further questions at this time.
Thank you.
Alderman Browning.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for all the work that's been put into this. I know it has been a lot, and we've asked some hard questions, but it has become a better bill, I think, and I'm looking forward to this meeting.
Alderman Aldridge.
No questions. Madam Clerk, could you ask me as a co-sponsor?
Noted.
Vice Chair Sanye.
I just want to thank Ms. Hayden for the work that she did on cleaning this up and having those follow-up conversations. I also want to apologize to license collector Thompson for any slights or any offensiveness that she might feel from any of us as well, and just echo what Chair Hubbard said, that it's never my goal to disrespect her. I have a lot of respect for her and the work that her office does. And just thank you all for going back in and doing the work. And I agree that this language is much more cleaner, and I think will be more easily understood by the public.
All right, with that, Madam Clerk, we'll go ahead. Everyone who's here to speak on Board Bill 41, if you raise your right hand, you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? All right, thank you so much. Madam Clerk.
First, we have in support, if I'm pronouncing this correct, I believe is it Kennard Williams?
Good morning, members of the HUD's committee. My name's Kennard Williams. I'm the organizing manager at Action St. Louis and member of the We the Tenants campaign. I'm here to tell you that we support this legislation, particularly the funding uses for it. As you know, a lot of the buildings and infrastructure in St. Louis City is having a really hard time right now, and this is impacting renters directly. With many places going offline, people being displaced after their housing has become unavailable, damage, people needing to fill out Citizen Service Bureau reports on issues that they have with their apartment that will absolutely result in them losing their housing. So yeah, we need this legislation to fund programs like the Impacted Tenant Fund, help fund the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and the Right to Counsel program. So I'd like to thank the sponsors of this legislation and hope that you consider it for passage. Thank you.
Next, we have in opposition Lisa Hayden.
Hello. Thank you for having us. Okay. My name is Lisa. This is my partner, Dan. We own and operate 3 short-term rentals, Airbnbs, in the city. I'm here to talk about who we are. I'm here to talk about why I feel Airbnbs and the way that we run them, and many hosts like us run them, are great for our city. When we purchased the homes, they were uninhabitable. Many flippers passed on them because they just required too much work. Dan was able to transform them, the exterior, the interior. Our neighbors thanked us for what we did. We have won garden awards. We host people from all over the world, be they college students, be they here to go to Siteman, just all kinds of things, you know. They leave us journal notes about where they spent their money. They spent it at local restaurants, some of our attractions. They comment about how clean and safe they felt in our neighborhoods. We are St. Louis. We live here. We raise our children here. This is our occupation. We do not want the kind of bad actors that we have had some issues with, but St. Louis already has a PR problem. And getting rid of Airbnbs is not the answer at all. Yeah, so Dan's going to talk more about the money. I kind of wanted to represent the human side and the personal side for us and our neighbors. Thank you.
We're opposed to Bill 41 due to the fact that we also have 2 bills that passed last fall, Bills 33 and 34, that are not fully implemented yet, and they're not going to be really coming online until November of this year. And we really think that we should wait on this bill until we find out what the full effects of 33 and 34 are going to be. That's it. Oh, yeah. On the 3 residential homes that we have, we paid the city, before they were short-term, paying the city $3,041.32 in real estate taxes. As of last year, we paid the city $6,072.88 in real estate tax, a difference of $3,031 per year. Since the city has collected occupancy from our guest stays, the city is on track to receive nearly $60,000 by the end of this year due to us running our property short term. Add to that miscellaneous personal property bills, permit fees that we'll be paying for on our house per year, occupancy license inspections. All of these dollars will go away to the city if we have to revert back to long. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Alderman Orion, just as a follow-up on that, for people that are listening, Can you speak to the timeline on 33 and 34 and the timeline on 41 so that we can kind of know the impact of it?
Sure. So 33 and 34 were board bills last session that had up to a 1-year rollout. The bill, but I think the important language there is that the building director, and we've had a change of building directors since then, but the building director can roll it out as soon as they are ready. There were several third-party contracts that needed to be put in place before. So we certainly didn't want to do an emergency clause, but we didn't want to put the building department in a place where they were going to be up against a deadline to roll it out. The previous building commissioner, then Commissioner Oswald, said that, a year is more than enough time. We can probably do it in 6 months. I said, okay, well, we'll just put a 6-month deadline on it. And he said, no, please give us a year. And so we did, but we anticipate the rollout of of those board bills to be in November, which is ultimately why I wanted this to go to the voters at that time, because any time that you're regulating any industry, I think it makes sense to say, hey, we're making a big change to this industry, and now these are the rules. And we can certainly tinker with things from there. As I talked about ad nauseum with 33 and 34, this is a first bite at the apple. We've seen other cities are now on their 3rd and 4th iterations of short-term rental legislation. This is St. Louis's first go at it. So my guess is it will have certain shortcomings, and we'll do what legislatures do and look to see what's working, what's not working, and update things as necessary.
And then hypothetically, with Board Bill 41, what's the timeline on that? Say it goes to the ballot in November, passes, what does the implementation of that look like?
I think Janika has the specifics there.
It would be so with the implementation of 33, the portal opens in November, and then hosts and platforms have until May to be in compliance. So I'll talk to the president a little bit. I think we will need to follow up either with 33, or if it needs to be a conversation with the administration. It really should be on par with the deadline to completely register with the city. So from November to May, if this passes in November, that'll just be lumped into the rest of the fees that they need to pay to be in compliance with 33. So need to have further conversations with the administration, but in my mind, it would be by the time the regulations begin, which is May of next year.
All right, thank you.
We have some folks online. We have Sarah Watkins. Could you please state if you are in opposition or support?
Hello, everyone. I'm in support of Board Bill 41.
Can we have everyone that's online to speak on Board Bill 41 raise your hand, and so I can swear you in at the same time? You swear to tell the truth and the whole truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Chairwoman, you also have 2 more, Rachel Hurtado. They're all starting to come in now, that you will have to swear in.
Okay.
They're coming in individually as we're speaking right now.
Okay, we'll give them a second.
Okay.
And are we alternating from people in the room to people online?
Yes. And we only have 2 more in the room, and the rest are online.
Online, okay.
Yes.
All right, do you all swear to tell the truth and whole truth to help you God? All right.
I do.
Thank you.
Yes.
And please state your name, and if you would like to share the city, county, ward, whatever information you would like to share.
Thank you. Hello, HUD's committee. My name is Sarah Watkins. I live in the 7th Ward. I'm the lead field organizer with Tenants Transforming Greater St. Louis, and I'm also a renter in the city. I'm in support of this bill because I'm speaking for renters, working class people, regular St. Louisans who are having difficulties finding places to live. Just some data from the Affordable Housing report card. Renters who fall within the 0 to 31% AMI group are facing a supply shortfall of approximately 35,000 units. Renters between 30 and 80% AMI are competing for those same units, even though they have higher incomes. And then I want to let you all know about the gaps in affordable housing that is also listed on this report. So right now, we have a shortage of 28,000 one-bedroom units, a shortage of 7,000 two-bedroom units, and a shortage of 1,900 three-bedroom units. Like we said, we don't know how many Airbnbs are in the city, but it is affecting people and their ability to find housing. So I support this bill. I believe in housing first. I believe housing is a human right. I believe in people over profit, and I believe that Airbnb owners should be taxed for taking away units from the community. Thank you.
Next, we have Dimitri in opposition.
Hello. Thank you for giving me a chance to speak up. Just want to give you my opinion. I did Airbnb like about 10 years ago, started when it was about 100 units in St. Louis. And I've seen...
Mr. Dimitri, could you speak more into the mic? Thank you.
Sure. I've seen it changing over the years. And I just wanted to give you my feedback. Airbnb has nothing to do with the shortage of housing. It's the industry, it's the business economy, that's how it works. Unfortunately, if you're buying a building today with current interest rates and you're financing it, you do have to charge high interest rate to at least break even. But I've been looking at many rental properties, considering to purchase, and you cannot make numbers to work. If you're buying a commercial or property rental and you want to make numbers to work with current interest rates, you can't. You'll be losing money. So Airbnb has nothing to do with it. If you're looking also at rentals, how many rentals available in St. Louis, there are so many already, okay? There are a lot of rental units empty, and people are going into Airbnb sometimes just so they can make up mortgage payments while they're looking for a long-term tenant. They've been trying, Elderman, been trying to push for legislature after legislature to tax these honest people who are working really hard to make a living doing Airbnb. And when I was doing Airbnb and I started paying commercial taxes on real estate, I did calculations, and Airbnb didn't make sense. Because when you're paying 4 times more in real estate tax, and you make a little bit more in the summer, but then you have empty winter, and then on average you make less per month than you would do in long-term rental. So what's happening right now, a lot of Airbnb hosts are getting out. You'll see listings, people are selling furniture, they're selling listings and they say, this was Airbnb, I'm just selling the building because I cannot make numbers work. People selling them, they're losing money. Right now, if you also, just to give you some numbers, just perspective. If you are booking Airbnb, for example, today in St. Louis, and I'm using numbers for simplicity, your family, you come here on family vacation, you booked a reservation for $1,000, you'll be paying $180 in service fees to Airbnb and $230 in taxes to St. Louis. Okay, so you'll be paying $400 extra on $1,000 in fees and taxes. So now you're proposing more taxes, and people already cannot make numbers to work. Like you really, the people on Airbnb have been following Airbnb platforms or host communications, and they say this was this lowest year in St. Louis for Airbnbs. The winter was dead. So people will make some money in the summer, but the slow season, fall and winter coming, and it's dead. So what will happen with additional proposed taxes, people will start getting out from Airbnbs. They'll flood the market with buildings. There will be empty buildings, and there's no tourism. Airbnb's host their ambassadors. You need to promote them, put them on pedestal, because they're doing what cities should be doing, promoting tourism for the city, bringing money to the neighborhoods, bringing tourism over here. Instead, you're trying to reach into the pockets and grab more and more. You're not punishing hosts, you're punishing regular people who come here on vacations. They're not going to pay more. They're already paying $400 for every $1,000 they spend here. The next time, they're just like, I'm not going over there. Or, why do I have to spend so much money? Every additional dollar you're trying to tax regular people who come into St. Louis, they're just going to kill the industry. Also, Expedia, who you keep mentioning, they're the ones who are against Airbnb, and they've been pushing against the Airbnb platform since the beginning because they lose the market share here. And they're in the pocket with, I don't know why, it just every time there's new legislation against Airbnb hosts, that the Expedia is being mentioned. How many Expedia units do we have in St. Louis? Do we have data? We don't. So Expedia is trying to punish Airbnb hosts who are just regular hardworking people by taxing them to death and get out of the business. So that just my couple cents. Thank you.
Mr. Dimitri, we have a couple questions. A colleague has a question. I have an important question too.
Sorry.
I would like to know who the young lady is with you.
This is my little assistant. We can't afford babysitters, so we have to raise them right, and they work hard with us, so we carry them everywhere.
Okay, how you doing, sweetheart?
Thank you. Sorry, I'm being
Yes,
emotional.
she, poor thing, has to be part of this legislative process today. That's okay. I'm sure you're going to get a big treat for this.
She doesn't find this very exciting, sorry.
I'm sure she doesn't, bless her heart. I have something for her, though, if you all are still here afterwards. Alderman Aldred.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for sharing your testimony, and thank you for being a host and trying to provide a business in the city. You was kind of going quick, so I was trying to catch up in emails at the same time. When you was talking about the taxes, could you explain that again? You were saying some numbers. Is that taxes on, you saying the user? Is that taxes on the owner? You had just mentioned some numbers and you kind of sped through them. So if you can.
It says occupancy taxes, so I don't know how they divide it, which taxes go to the city or to state, but that's what they said when the guest make reservation. It says, 230 out of which 1,000 goes to occupancy taxes.
Okay.
So, and then 180 goes to the Airbnb platform.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's a lot. I mean, we just traveled to Houston, and we spent, like on Airbnb, $100 on the reservation, and we paid $50 in taxes and service fees. So it's like it's a lot more extra. Every dollar they keep adding, it's hurting the industry.
Gotcha. And I'm new to, I've always just used Airbnb, and I've learned about, you said Expedia, and then I know there's also like Vrbo out there. And what you're saying is there is more, just so I'm clear, there's more Airbnb units than these Expedia and other platforms.
So it's a long story. About 10 years ago, there were two big players in the industry, VRBO and Airbnb, and Expedia bought VRBO, and they kind of first wanted, well, and it's just my opinion, and from what I was reading and listening to people saying, they wanted they bought it to get rid of the competitor, right? So, but then they noticed that they were losing market share. So then what they started doing is trying to bring it up. While in the cities in general, VRBOs are not as successful. They're working well in resorts, like when you have big towns like mountains or on the ocean sides, VRBOs work better over there. But in the cities, for some reason, Airbnb has been more successful, and that's why Expedia doesn't like it, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that's why they're trying to keep pushing for new legislators to kind of kill the industry.
Yeah, and maybe this may be a question for the bill sponsor as far as the fees, because I just want to make sure I'm clear, and I know there's been a lot of change from around short-term rentals, which I will not lie, I'm a big, anytime I travel, I'm a big fan of using Airbnb instead of going to a hotel. It's more personable, it's more,
Exactly. It's, Airbnbs are not competitors. It's different market. Some people like hotels, some people like Airbnbs.
and I do know at the same time, there's nothing perfect to anything. There's been some Airbnbs who, especially like in my ward in downtown, who owners that just aren't being as responsible. Not saying that's any in the room, but probably put a bad cloud on the rest who are trying to do good. But and this is a question, Madam Chair, if I could ask the bill sponsor if he could come forward. So I'm just, after your testimony, I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Sure. Thank you.
So in this bill, because I know, so we just don't get confused between 33 and 34. Last session, in this session, in this bill, the fees that are collected, is that on the owner or will that be on the user?
This would be a fee, essentially a user fee. This tax would be the person booking the short-term rental would be taxed on this.
Okay, so this isn't.
And I think it's important to note that even with this tax, it still is less than the hotel tax. So it would still potentially be less expensive even with this tax than staying in a hotel.
Yeah. And I guess since we go into the percentage, I should have asked this question earlier. Since we go into the percentage, that would vary from each Airbnb, or
it would depend on the dollar amount per night stayed at each individual Airbnb, or each individual short-term rental, I should say, because the paying a flat percentage is going to vary wildly if you're getting a $100 a room night versus a $1,000 a room, or a $1,000 a night home.
Gotcha. Okay, that's all I got for right now.
Sure.
Next, we have Ms. Maisha Johnson. Could you state if you're in support or in opposition?
I'm in support of the bill, but I wanted to make sure that the funding will be used towards what extra will be used towards creating affordable housing. Because of the Airbnbs, there is lack of affordable housing, being that there's no rent cap. So as the Airbnbs take up the spaces, the landlords continue to charge triple the rents as of February this year. And as a renter, it's not helping or assisting with the housing crisis that we're already experiencing.
Thank you, Ms. Maisha. Next, we have in opposition Ms. Amanda McCracken.
Hello again. I have been a real estate broker for more than 30 years. So with all due respect, that is inaccurate information. I have 4 long-term rentals in addition to my short-term rentals. We are not, I think sometimes they portray us as these greedy, hungry money people, and we're not. We are regular, hardworking citizens. We clean our houses, we're in our yards. Comparing the two, I've had real estate in St. Louis. I've rehabbed over 100 homes in the last 30 years. The real estate prices have gone through the roof. I just saw a house came on yesterday that I bought. It's at the corner of, it's right across from Tower Grove on Arsenal. I think we bought it for like $80,000, probably put 50 in it and sold it for like, I don't know, 225, which was a lot back then. It just listed today for 447, same house. It's just the housing prices. My long-term rentals, for instance, 3 years ago, the tenant was paying $1,200 a month, and the tenant moved out. I looked at Zillow, because I look at Zillow rents, and I looked at the area rents in the area. I was able to go from $1,200 to $1,850 a month in 3 years. Does that make me greedy? No. All of my taxes have gone up. It doesn't make me greedy. I'm a business person. But we are not taking affordable housing because of Airbnb. Absolutely not. I'm also a realtor. There are 685 homes for sale. There are 1,153 for rent currently on Zillow, and there's 4,000 in St. Louis City and County available. I understand that those are not really for affordable housing, but we can't help that. That's not because we're taking up property. Because we're just taking these houses. We have to charge more because our costs have gone up. My MSD has gone up. All my expenses have gone up. My taxes have gone up. And with Airbnb, my taxes went in 1 year from 2022 was $6,254 on 4 houses. On 2023, they go to $12,065. That's an increase of $5,811 in 1 year. My short-term rentals went up by $284 in 1 year. Huge difference. I feel like we're already getting hit so hard, and we're providing the city with a wonderful service. Our people come in and they love our city. They're spending money here. Maybe take some of the houses that are vacant and that are empty and provide programs to fix those houses up for affordable housing. Maybe create some programs where we can build some houses in some areas where we can take down and tear down these falling down abandoned homes and build some small homes or whatever they have. There's different programs going on. I've seen stuff going on for the VA. There's lots of other things, but it's not us that is taking away from affordable housing. We are actually contributing to our economy. We're contributing to people who we hire to clean our houses, do our handiwork. We clean, landscapers. I mean, we put a lot of money into our city. And I would just kind of like to ask a question on the tax increase. So we're now being taxed commercial. There was no explanation, nothing. The use of the home is the same. The people are there, they use the home, they cook there, they sleep there, they shower there, they get ready there. The only difference is they're there less than 30 days. But if they're there 31 days, then they're long-term. Then our taxes go back to half. We're back regular again. 31 days, I don't understand. I don't know how they can just double our taxes like that, and we get the tax bill and we're just shocked because we're like, how are we going to afford this? And then we've got all these other fees. We've got all these other taxes, the personal property taxes of $100 per building. It's just we're being taxed out of the business. If I do go back to long-term rental, because I'm going to have to if I keep getting taxed, my houses will still not be for affordable housing, and doesn't make me bad. It's just my mortgages are high. Some of them won't even be able to afford because our mortgages are so high, our interest rates are so high. We're just trying to make ends meet here. And our long-term goal, like for me personally, has been, I've had some of these buildings for a long time. I'm creating my retirement. I don't have a retirement fund. I don't have a pension. I don't have anything like my retirement are my homes. My kids' inheritance are my homes. So it's like, I feel like it's all just been taken away. And so it's very frustrating as an owner because we're just struggling just to make our ends meet. And, not to mention the furnace goes out. Well, used to a furnace would be, $2,500, $3,000. Now it's like $7,000. I mean, we can't hardly afford roofing. It's doubled. So it's not only our everyday cost, it's these costs of repairs, and everything has gone through the roof. So, people want Airbnb. And so when they come here, I would just like to be able to provide them a very nice home where they can feel comfortable and safe, bring their pets, their kids play in the yard. But I don't want to be blamed for the lack of affordable housing because that is completely inaccurate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Chris Wilcock in support.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Chris Wilcox. I'm in the 14th Ward. So I should ask the real estate folks here, don't threaten me with a good time. You're doing a great argument, or you're doing a great job making my argument for me. It's obvious that we need the money for affordable housing and for a tenant impact fund for all the people who are living in substandard housing or likely to be having their building condemned due to an impending disaster like a Heritage House. And all of the speakers in opposition to this bill have so far said that they have multiple properties. Airbnbs were marketed as a way for a family to make a little bit of extra income on their home. That's clearly not what it does. They're not even a good option for the consumer anymore. It's not much cheaper, if at all, and it comes with extra chores. At least hotels have to pay housekeepers so people get a job out of it. And, it's very evident just from the people that showed up today, the short-term rentals create a whole new class of landlords who hoard homes that can't even live in. To the extent that taxes will get paid and they stay in business, it pays for some of the damage that these landlords are doing with Airbnbs to support affordable housing and protection for tenants from substandard conditions. Sorry that your mortgage for a house you don't live in is costing too much. Go put your money someplace else. Find some other investment. Make an actual retirement fund instead of trying to use the real estate market to be your piggy bank. To the extent that housing is not, that affordable housing doesn't work out on the numbers, great. Support the Affordable Housing Trust Fund so that we can subsidize housing and build housing that actually can put people in affordably. There's all kind, it's very funny that all of these arguments that are supposedly against the bill are exactly why we ought to pass it. There's no benefit to the consumer. There's certainly no benefit to the neighborhood. If it does flood the market with real estate and bring down the prices, great. Maybe home prices will be at a place people actually can afford. All of these things there's no downside to any of these consequences. So I urge the Board of Aldermen to pass Board Bill 41. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Next, we have in support Rachel Hurtado.
Hello, my name is Rachel Hurtado. I live in Ward 7. I'm a renter, and I also am part of the We the Tenants campaign. And I want to express my support for this bill, especially for where these tax dollars will be directed. We have a housing crisis in St. Louis City. It's no secret. And as other folks have spoken to today, just this year, we've seen disinvested properties fall apart and displace hundreds of people, low-income folks, Black people, elders in our city. And if we love St. Louis, as some of these Airbnb owners who testify in opposition to this bill claim, we have to show that love to the most vulnerable St. Louisans who cannot afford rent, let alone buying a home. In fact, many people who rent out, who are Airbnb owners and rent out more than one property are people who own more than one home. The data shows that about a quarter of the hosts on Airbnb own nearly 2/3 of the listings on Airbnb. You heard them here today. The people in this room who oppose this bill own not one, but 2, 3, 4, 5 homes that they use for these short-term rentals. That means that many of the people who own more than one home and rent them out for profit, while other people struggle to afford their first home at all. We struggle to afford our rent. And these owners make much more money off of short-term stays than they would renting out the property as a home to someone who actually lives in the city. Airbnb absolutely contributes to the affordable housing crisis in St. Louis and in the United States. One independent study across the US from just 2020 found that for the median annual Airbnb growth in each zip code, it translates to an annual increase of $9 in monthly rent and $1,800 in housing prices, which means that they are directly increasing our rent and directly increasing housing prices. This accounts for about 1/5 of rent growth and 1/7 of actual price growth for homes in our communities. Consider that the negative impacts of Airbnb on the people in our city outweigh the benefits. Just this past session, the Board of Aldermen passed tax breaks and approvals for 2 new hotels to be built on Market Street. Even for the business that Airbnb owners claim to stimulate in St. Louis, they have flooded the hospitality market with these short-term rentals, and they detract business from those hotels. Most importantly, Airbnb owners play a huge role in gentrifying the few neighborhoods in the city where renters can still afford to live. You heard the last woman, she increased property values of one of her homes in Tower Grove East to $500,000. That is pushing renters out of these communities, out of our neighborhoods, because we can't afford the rent. I support this bill directing these minimal taxes to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund so that we can build long-term solutions to the housing crisis in St. Louis on the front end, and directing to the Impacted Tenants Fund to support low-income renters when they are impacted by these housing crises on the back end. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have in support Matthew Stanley.
Actually, that is oppose.
I'm sorry.
Did you hear that?
I did, thank you.
Okay.
So, to begin, this is Don Massey.
Mr. Stanley, you have to turn your camera. Sorry.
We do not have a camera today. Can we continue? I apologize.
I'm sorry. It's not a. It's not a personal preference. It's an actual rule when you're giving testimony.
Okay. Can you go to somebody else and we'll get a camera and come back?
Sure.
All right. Thank you.
This is okay. So, Mr. Stanley, I was just informed that you're our last person, so we'll give you a few minutes. I'll see if any of my colleagues would like to speak in between while in preparation. Okay. So, Mr. Stanley, as soon as you're ready, just raise your hand or notify the clerk so that she can bring you back up.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Aldridge, you said you had some comments.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm going to take a saying out of the chairwoman's playbook, because she always do it so amazingly. You know, I'm glad that we having this conversation in committee. As she always say, this is where like the conversations happen. And as I'm hearing it, you know, I know a lot of people that are in support. We've worked on some legislation together, one live in a ward. I have never met the individuals that are opposed besides this hearing today. And I think, you know, I just want to put out there, I think we all want the same thing. You know, I know there's a lot of finger pointing, saying that either Airbnbs are taken away from affordable housing and that Airbnb owners feel that, you know, this is an attack on them and you're trying to help the city. I think I will say when it comes to affordable housing, I am supporting this bill because I also agree that I think the funds going to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is good, and also Impacted Tenants Fund. I'm not supporting that because I'm saying Airbnb owners are the reason why. I mean, even with this amount of money that's going to affordable housing, it won't fix the affordable housing crisis that we have in the city of St. Louis. And being honest, it has been going on for decades. If you really want to talk about intentional disinvestment in North St. Louis, that has been happening way before I've been born. And I think, you know, there's an opportunity, I think, for us to be able to have on both ends. Because at the same time, we do have some Airbnb owners, like I said, that are not the best operators. I can point to a lot in the downtown as it's getting hot where these parties are happening, and it makes it very hard, not just for the operators, but it makes it hard for people who live in these communities. And I think that's what we tried to address with Alderman Bretton Ryan's bill that we passed last year, to try to weed out the good and the bad, to not allow good owners to leave the city, because I do believe that Airbnb and maybe some of these others I haven't used can provide a service for people who either want to come into the city and don't want to stay in a hotel because it's just not the same type of opportunities, and want to do more of a long stay, may have a family where they can cook and, you know, more personable compared to staying in a hotel. But all that being said, I think we are all wanting the same thing. And I think, you know, this is a good conversation that we're having together. I don't think one or the other are bad individuals. Again, glad money's going to the Affordable Trust Fund. Being honest with this fee and Impacted Tenants Fund, I don't think it's going to fix the long-term detriment that has been happening throughout our city for a very long time. If you take a Airbnb and the owner takes a few of those homes off the market, we're talking about thousands also of homes that still are not just affordable, but also, you know, the way that some of these big companies that come and make these affordable living also aren't doing it in a quality way. But at the same time, all that being said, I think we're talking about the same thing and pointing the fingers at each other. And I hope, you know, as we continue to have these conversations, we all work together to try to figure out how do we bring affordable housing, and at the same time, how do we support people who want to provide a business for folks that want to come into the city and maybe stay at an Airbnb instead of a hotel. Because I know anytime I travel, I'm picking a short-term rental over a hotel. And at the end of the day, this isn't the end-all be-all. I know this has to go to the ballot in November, so at the end of the day, the voters will have the last say, and this is just a process at the Board of Aldermen to allow voters and the discussion and conversation to continue compared to what Board Bill 33 and 34 was, where it actually went into policy. So everyone that's here today will have another opportunity, if it passed in November, to have their voices heard at the ballot box. Thank you.
Matthew Stanley.
Yeah, we're here. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, thank you.
You can hear me clearly, thank you. Please turn that down. First, I would just like to express my deep respect for this board, the Board of Aldermen. I understand how hard that you all work, and thank you for representing us. I would also like to thank Ms. McCracken, because I feel this was poorly communicated and just learned about it yesterday at 2 a.m. So I'm here to give my voice to that short-term rental operator. My business partner, Matthew, and I, who's here with me on this call, we live in Dutchtown neighborhood in Ward 3, and I've lived in St. Louis for 35 years, and I'm very proud of our beautiful city. I believe that Alderman Rashid is correct when he said about conversation, and I think there needs to be more conversation about this. I am in opposition of this, and I'd like to suggest some thoughts and edits to this proposal. Again, I just learned about this yesterday at 2 o'clock before getting up to collect the trash around my neighborhood, empty the city trash cans because it's not being picked up, and also calling about a burned out car next door and also derelict property. We are owner occupied, and we're very proud of our Airbnb, our small business that we have built from the ground up. As a property owner, we ensure our property is clean. We ensure that it's inviting every single day. This is challenging when we now live next to a defunct hospital and several deteriorating properties, but we try to make it beautiful in our neighborhood. People are visiting and staying here because of our Superhost ratings and our hospitality. We're not making a ton of money. We're just providing a space for people to be comfortable. We are constantly answering the questions of, is it safe? Can we stay here? And we are offering recommendations not only where they can eat, but also the beautiful spots in the cities where they can attend. I believe that taxing Airbnb, this is not the solution. We need a better solution, and I also feel it's unfair, and it should be across the board for everyone. If we want to provide funds for affordable housing, we need to find a more sustainable approach than just attacking and taxing short-term Airbnb rentals. The real problem in rentals, as we know, is out-of-town people who manage them remotely. We live on site. We are here every day to handle our neighborhood and any of these problems that arise. Board Bills 33 and 34 have not even been enacted yet, and I feel this is a rush to get this to voters. I'm sure that it's going to pass once it gets on the ballot, but I think we should pause. I heard from the last meeting that this $1.50 charge was taken from other cities. Personally, I'd like to see the data. I'd like to know if it was successful. I would like to know how they plan to roll it out, who governed it successfully, and what were the long-term outcomes. This is why we should pause this until we know something more and it's presented to us fairly. So in conclusion, I guess that I would just like to say no to this. Let's take a pause. We should look further into providing more for affordable housing and make it fair. Apply the fee to everyone. So before we put this to a vote, I just want to say thank you for all of your time and listening to me. So again, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I have to do some things for clarity. One, I need you to state your name because you noted that Mr. Stanley was with you. So we need to have your
Yes,
name
my
for the
name is-
record.
Sure, of course. My name is Don Massey, Massey, co-owner with Matthew Stanley.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Massey. And I also note, thank you for your comments. Thank you for taking the time to jump on here today. Thank you for your service and your commitment to your neighborhood with all the things that you noted that you had to do just this morning, right? In preparation for getting on here. So I appreciate you all. I wanted to note that one of the things that you commented on has been changed in an amendment today that was put forth and accepted. And so that 150 is no longer in this legislation. The $1.50 charge is no longer in this legislation. It's now a percentage charge, and we can share that with you as well. That's another part of the process, quirky part of the process sometimes that you hear about amendments in committee versus prior to. So again, thank you for your comments and for your commitment. Please feel free to reach out to us and continued communication as this legislation moves forward.
Chairwoman, we do have one person that just signed up. I'm not sure if he's in support or opposition, and he will need to be sworn in. His name is Caleb Doyle.
I support.
Are you able to turn your camera on, Mr. Doyle?
Yep.
Thank you. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. You may proceed.
I don't have a whole lot to say. I just wanted to offer support as another resident, as a renter, as someone who lives in a neighborhood that is deeply affected by short-term rentals. I want to commend Rachel and Chris, if they're still on, for all they had to say. I think they laid it out very well. You know, we are talking about short-term rentals taking away access to affordable housing as if it is an opinion. It is not an opinion. It is a fact. Across the street from me in Ward 6, Tower Grove South, right by the park, in fact, bustling area. Recently, a 4-family was vacated and had to be completely renovated. It was renovated and all 4 units were converted into Airbnbs. So not really sure what the rationale is on that not being taking away affordable housing. Could have been 4 families that could have lived on my street. Everybody on my street pays below or around $1,000 in rent for their units. So I think maybe we're getting caught up in the home buying versus renting. And I do commend Alderman Aldridge for his comments. He's done a lot of great work for this city. You know, and I think I do see the perspective of wanting to sit down around the table and shake hands and, you know, agree with each other and sing Kumbaya, but that is not the reality we live in. We are talking about people in power versus people who do not have power. People in power being those who own property. People not in power being those who rent the property. And, you know, I would like to see us work together as much as the next person, but until we're talking about, you know, beyond that. So just want to thank again, Rachel and Chris, for your comments. I'm strongly in support of this regulation and strongly in support of any regulation on short-term rentals. We are miles behind every major American city in our regulations on short-term rentals. It was up until the last session, really, when we had virtually any regulations put in place. And, you know, really, I think the problem is in a lot of ways not the folks sitting in the room, which, by the way, shocked that they had time to show up in person. But I think the problem is not those folks. It sounds like they take care of their community, they take care of their neighborhood, they clean up the trash, what have you. The problem is the facility like the building across the street from me, the 4-family. It is operated by Squared LLC, a gentleman by the name of Brandon Annan, who I don't know if he lives locally or what have you, but it is a classic example that we see all the time of someone buying and renovating an Airbnb, hiring a company, whether they're local or somewhere else in the US, to operate that Airbnb, and not necessarily having on-site contacts. So, I think there are a lot of good people who own these buildings and run nice Airbnbs that contribute to the community, but there are also a lot of bad actors. And unfortunately, it's like when you were in school and the teacher would punish the entire class because the class clown had to, put a whoopee cushion under her seat. And that's just the risk you run, I guess, when you open these small businesses. And I would echo what Chris said. If the taxes and the regulations are too much, you should get out and sell your property and get into a different business. So I'm strongly support of this and any regulations on short-term rentals in St. Louis.
Thank you. That is all.
Okay. We'll move. Did you have any comments after public comment, or you want to go ahead and hear from the committee? Okay. Okay, I didn't know if you had any follow-up for any other comments that were made. Okay. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Clark Hubbard and members of the committee and everybody who came to speak today. This is a really interesting bill, and the work that has been done around short-term rentals in the city of St. Louis over the last few years. To the public comment, people who came to speak, St. Louis is really far behind in regulating short-term rentals. There was research from Harvard in 2019 that shows the percentage of, for every 1% increase in Airbnbs in a market, there's a corresponding increase in rental rates that accounts for about 1/5 of the increase that people have seen over time. So to say there isn't a correlation is just not what the research shows. And also, with the seasonal availability of Airbnbs or short-term rental being in a situation where they might be vacant and empty, the amount of time and effort that the city is spending dealing with vacant properties, however it's vacant, is enormous. And having them sit vacant when people aren't able to find affordable rental is definitely a problem as well. There's a comment made about St. Louis having higher taxes on short-term rentals in Houston. That's not the case. Houston has higher taxes in the city of St. Louis for short-term rentals. So those are just some of the comments that I heard that I wanted to make sure we discussed publicly out loud, just so people knew that what some other information is available on that. I think the commercial rate as well for short-term rentals is absolutely appropriate for the property tax, the real estate taxes that are being paid. Just in the fact that the city of St. Louis only started collecting commercial property taxes from short-term rentals 5 years ago is huge in terms of the amount of foregone tax revenue that the city was not collecting at commercial rates of these short-term rentals before 2019. So I think it looks more to me like the city is attempting to right-size the tax burden on short-term rental owners and operators rather than create an undue burden. And I appreciate this and the information people came forward with today.
Alderman Browning.
Thank you. I want to echo the comments from my colleagues in the 14th and the 1st. I think as a city, we need to grow. Growing means having space for people who want to be a resident, and that means prioritizing people who want to be residents in that housing. I think short-term rentals bring benefits to the city, and that's why we haven't outright outlawed them. But I think that when it comes to the housing stock in our city, the tax we're proposing here is to, as my colleague put it, help standardize that taxing rate and make it so that we're treating different types of housing as they should be treated. I think the difference between a short-term rental and a long-term rental is that a long-term rental is providing housing. A short-term rental is providing a service. I think that's a really key distinction we need to make. So I am happy to support this bill today, and I just want to emphasize that while I do hear the arguments from short-term rental owners and appreciate the contributions they've made and continue to make to our city, this is simply trying to even the playing field a little bit in order to push us in the direction of having more available housing. And no, I do not think this is going to solve the affordable housing shortage by itself, but no single solution will. So this is part of that equation, and we're just supporting this today.
Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I said what I said.
Vice Chair Sanyeh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I first just want to say, like, I did hear the frustration of, you know, the operators, and I really hate when we create these binaries that don't exist. It is not, you know, either Airbnbs or affordable housing, and I do hear the pushback on that, and I think that's, you know, very valid. And I even dislike to see, you know, an inherent tension between residents of communities and operators of these types of facilities, because I do agree that, you know, when me and my friends travel, or, you know, whatever the case may be, or family, we also go stay in Airbnbs. They are an option. And I do, you know, I would never paint them wholly as detrimental, period. And I think, like, that's very valid pushback. And I just wanted to go on the record that I heard you all's frustration. What I would hope as well on the flip side is, I think, you know, at the end of the day, we have a housing system. And so all these things play together. And so there's a number of things that many of you all referenced in your testimony, whether it's the cost, insurance is going up, inflation is going up, construction work is going up. I know you all have cleaning fees, the cost of your staff is going up, right? Everything is going up. And so I totally understand what you're saying. I think the things that the residents are highlighting is the fact that, you know, I live within a system where things are going up, and Airbnbs are not the reason that these problems are happening, but they are a part of the system that these things are happening. And so I think that they're making a fair request to their government representatives and their legislators, and several of my constituents specifically spoke to say, hey, we want to see some additional regulation. We want to see, you know, okay, you're not going to ban it, you're not going to eliminate this industry, but how can we make sure that this industry adds to it? I know that, you know, a rise in taxes, a rise in fees, it really does. It's unfortunate. Nobody ever really wants an additional tax. Nobody really wants additional cost, but that is one of the things that governments have at our dispersal to do. And again, it is not many of you all, because you all stated that you live here. It is a lot of times out-of-town property owners. But I've had an incident. One of the first things that happened after getting elected was there was a shooting that resulted in the killing of someone within a facility. And so I do think that as these incidents happen, sometimes we do paint with one brush stroke, which is not fair to any group to paint someone a monolithic. And so I want to acknowledge that, but also just say I think it's important for both sides to hear each other. I think it's possible for residents to have valid concerns about their housing supply, about the rising costs, and the fact that Airbnb is a factor in that equation. And on the flip side, I think it's okay for you all to say, we're trying to operate business, we're trying to help provide meet a need for an industry that does exist, and put it, you know, where we live. And so I just, you know, want to say that, because I really don't like binaries. I just really dislike those things. I don't think, you know, we're all in this system, we're all in this city, and we're all trying to make it work. And so I know you all may not be the happiest with the outcome today. I added myself as co-sponsor. I'm going to, you know, vote for this, but I also hope that you know that we had many conversations behind the scenes to work this out, even starting with Alderman Orion waiting and pressing pause on the conversation. But oftentimes, like we say all the time, everybody does not win, everybody does not get what they want. I know plenty of constituents are like, please ban the Airbnbs altogether, we don't want them. And I'm like, absolutely not. I would not ever support banning an industry altogether. But I do think that that sweet spot, and I think this bill is there, of finding out if this is a factor of this, if this is something that we have a levy to, if it is something that constituents are complaining about, if it has led to certain issues, this may be a part of the toolbox that we use to address these issues for all. And ultimately, I think that, you know, if we address this and we do this, when we have more affordable housing, when we have more funding available for people to not be displaced, or more funding available for unhoused, it will help you all operating your facility. You will be able to do business in a city that is safer and more accessible, and everybody has their basic needs, and that will benefit, you know, all of us. So I just wanted to, you know, thank you all. And I know the folks who gave public comment virtually can't see me, but you all know I'm always grateful to see you all too. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Ryan, you're welcome to close.
Thank you, Chairwoman, members of the committee. I think, as Alderwoman Saunier pointed out, I hope at least that we've found the middle ground here, because I'll be honest, I stay at short-term rentals when I go on vacations with friends, with family. I'm certainly not anti short-term rentals. There was a lot of pressure to ban short-term rentals. I took a lot of flack from people who wanted no short-term rentals at all, and I was somehow a shill for the short-term rental industry and keeping them alive. And now the next session, somehow I am, trying to kill short-term rentals altogether. I am not opposed to these things, but housing is a zero-sum game. When we look at housing stock, every house that is a short-term rental is a house that a family or a member of our community cannot live in. Today, we heard a lot about taxes and taxation. As a business owner, as a person who works, as just a United States citizen, yeah, taxes aren't fun, but that's the cost of doing business. When you engage in commerce, you get taxed on that. And everyone that we heard from here today that was opposed to this, they told us about the properties that they operate and make money from, and it is reasonable for government to tax commerce. It's not fun, but it's a part of how we provide basic services for people. I think there is a direct correlation between a lack houses being taken off of the market and used for and then a simple supply and demand when it comes to housing stock. Additionally, we heard testimony today that many of these houses are used a lot during the summer and essentially sit empty in the winter. If we look at exactly when we are trying to advocate for and protect our most vulnerable members of society, it's wintertime where these houses are sitting empty by the testimony that we heard today. I don't think it's unreasonable to impose a tax, and this needs to go before the ballot, the voters, but I don't think it's unreasonable to impose a tax that directly addresses that issue. And to put this in light, we're taxing this less than a hotel. If I pay for $1,000 stay, so, depending on the property that I was choosing to stay at, that could be several nights, that could be, one big house, but I'm going to pay $30. And I think if we hear the testimony that we heard today about how these short-term rentals are an important and integral part of some communities. I know I live in Dogtown, right next to Fort Park. The zoo's there. The park is there. We have, the hospitals are nearby, so we have traveling nurses, things like that. People come and they stay at these short-term rentals, and it's great. But I think that that $30 taxation on $1,000 stay is not unreasonable when we're talking about houses that, by what we've heard here today, oftentimes sit empty in the winter when we are struggling to put together places for people to quite literally not freeze to death. Importantly, this is a user fee paid by the individuals who book the short-term rental. So this is not something we heard today, everything from the taxation rate of commercial real estate to the fact that hot water heaters were getting more expensive. And I agree, everything across the board is getting more expensive. It's not fun for any of us, I don't think. But when you're booking a $1,000 vacation in a residential area, a fee that's less than you would pay at a hotel, I don't believe is unreasonable, and I don't believe that the voters are going to think that's unreasonable. And ultimately, what we're doing here today and then at the full Board of Aldermen is asking the voters a question. And that question is, would they like to impose this tax? Maybe they're going to say, absolutely not. We love short-term rentals in our communities, and we don't want to tax them because we want to make them, we want a very low barrier to entry to them. They may very well say that. I don't believe that that's what's going to happen, but I've been surprised at what the voters do in the past. And with that, I'm happy to answer any additional questions, and I ask for your favorable consideration.
All righty. With that, I'll accept the motion on Board Bill 41, Committee Sub as amended.
Just clarify with the do pass recommendation.
It's whatever the motion is made when the person makes the motion.
Committee substitute.
Second.
Well, we do
It
have
was
one more.
passed.
Your
I'm
amendment.
sorry. The motion was made by Vice Chair Sanye, seconded by Alderman Browning, and call for previous roll. Was put forth. Any objection? No objection to previous roll, so congratulations, Alderman.
Thank you.
Did we have any written written testimony?
We did. We have 12 we had a total from last week of 22. We have a new ones in today of 12.
Did they note if they were in opposition or in support?
Support.
An additional 12 in support?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We do need to go back and do the housekeeping of an approval of the minutes Tuesday, June 18th, 2024. Accept the motion.
Approve the minutes from Tuesday, June 18th of 2024.
Second.
It was moved by Alderman Aldridge and seconded by Alderman Browning that we approve the minutes from June 18th, 2024. Is there a call for previous roll?
Previous roll.
Hearing no objection to previous roll, thank you. We've approved the minutes from Tuesday, June 18th. We would like to excuse Alderman Cone for necessary absence. And with that, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Previous roll.
Objection.
It was
Overruled.
right.
Oh, yeah.
The motion to adjourn has been passed with previous roll. Thank you all. Have a blessed day.
He's bringing it back now.